Welcome to this module of Professor Messer's free Microsoft 7680 certification training course. This module is on monitoring Windows 7. I'm James Messer, and in this module we're going to look at the requirements from our section on monitoring and maintaining systems that run Windows. And this is going to look at event logging, filtering event logs, event subscriptions, data collector sets, and how to generate a systems diagnostics report for your Windows 7 environment. Monitoring your operating system can provide you with some really important information. Being able to look at how much disk space is available, how much CPU are you currently using, what's that utilization, how much memory is available for applications to use. You can see all of that if you're looking at the performance of the operating system, and very often that gives you some insight into knowing if something is starting to go wrong. Are you starting to be very low on memory? Maybe that's time to close different applications, or maybe it's time to upgrade your computer. Sometimes if you're troubleshooting, these metrics can also point to where your problem might be occurring. If an application keeps crashing, maybe that's because we notice there's not enough disk space to be able to load some files up into cache. Maybe we are running out of memory for the application. We wouldn't know that unless we had a way to get performance information from our operating system. Also built into Windows 7 are some very interesting graphs and charts that we can view so that you're just not looking at huge tables of numbers. And on occasion, when you're looking at these pictures and charts of information, they'll tell you a story about how things have been over time. We'll talk about how to save some of that information and be able to look at it in this module. And lastly, we also have to be able to do this not just for our workstation, but for every single workstation, every single server, every single device in our enterprise. Sometimes that's a handful of devices, sometimes it's hundreds, sometimes it's thousands of systems. But fortunately, there are some methods built into Windows 7 that allows us to gather these metrics all from one location, from every device, every Windows 7 operating system that we happen to have wherever it is in the enterprise. The event viewer is the first place we'll start when gathering this information about what's happening on your computer. You'll find the event viewer under Control Panel. In Administrative Tools, there is Event Viewer right there. One of the nice parts of Event Viewer is there's so much information you can gather from inside the Event Viewer. In these event logs, you have separate logs set aside just for the way applications are performing. You've also got logs for security, logs for setup, logs for system, and forwarded events. This gives you a lot of detail about how a particular application might be performing, what happened when you tried to set up a program, or about the security of who might have logged on to your network or off of your network right there from the security log. You can also generate custom views inside of this. This is really useful because often you'll go into your event log and you'll see a ton of information, many different kinds of logs. But maybe what you're interested in is just a log for a particular application, or maybe you just want to see the logs during a certain time frame. You can create custom views of this that can break down every piece of this and filter out just the information that you want to see. I'm logged into my Windows 7 desktop, and I've got this great purple background which signifies on my computer that I'm logged in as the administrator. I've set my administrator background to be this royal purple, and I did that because if I go to Control Panel under Administrative Tools and I want to see the event viewer, I might want to go into the security logs of the event viewer, and you have to be administrator access to be able to view the security log. So I wanted to be able to show you as much as possible here. When this comes up, there's three panes you can see here. On the left side is a list of all of the different logs. Here's our custom views that you might have set up. There's administrative events views that are already there. The Windows logs themselves, you can see application, security, setup, system, and forwarded events. And there is an applications and services logs that even breaks down further information relating to what you might have in the event viewer. The middle is the overview and summary, which is the default screen that comes up by default that lists out for us the number of administrative events for the last hour, 24 hours, and 7 days for these different types of events: critical, error, warning, and information. Then there's audit success as well. So in the last hour, I've had a number of errors that have come up. I could easily click this plus sign, and it's going to drill down just on those specific errors that might have occurred. A DHCP client terminal services problem, there's a group policy issue that I need to look at, and I can double click and drill down into any of these and find out what the problem was. Oh, I wasn't able to talk to my domain controller, probably because when I started this particular machine, my domain controller was not turned on. Now it is, and it's able to pull across this information regarding group policy, but I'm able to see that when I did start this particular group policy was not able to update itself. If we go into things like the application log, we can see things specific to applications and the things going on with those. Database information I have. There's a search application that's running on this machine. And if I go to the security log, again, a log you can only see if you are the administrator, you can see those audit success information associated with what's happening on this computer. Now we can create custom views in here as well. If I go up to my custom views here, you've got actions on here how you could create a custom view, and you have a lot of different options available. Maybe I would like to see things that are logged only in the last 7 days, and I only want to see critical and I want to see warnings, and only logs that happen to be in the, let's do system and security. That's it. That's the only two I want to pull in from. And that looks good. We'll click OK, and we'll call this view the high-level view. And I'm going to click OK. And now I have a custom view right here that pulls in the criticals and the warnings for the last 7 days in those particular logs and lists those for me. So if you're looking for a particular app, you're looking for a particular severity, anything that you can pull into that custom view now will always be available to me whenever I go to my event viewer, and I'll be able to view whatever I'd like here. If you're looking at the event log on a single computer, well, that was pretty easy. We were able to filter things out quite simply. But what if you're interested in consolidating events from many different machines in your environment? You'll want to create these things called event subscriptions that then consolidate all of those logs onto what we call a collector computer. That collector, as the name implies, is in charge of collecting everything, and you're going to need a lot of disk space to store all of those different logs there. You can, of course, go into your event viewer and manually connect every single computer in your environment and look at the logs individually, but that could take quite a bit of time. By collecting everything on one computer, you first have a central place you can go, and there are a number of third-party tools that can parse through those logs for you to bring the important things up to the top to allow you to see them. There are a couple of ways to start gathering this information. One is through a method called a collector-initiated subscription. And that's when your collector machine is in charge of going out to the other devices on your network to gather the event logs from those devices. Those devices out in your network, the source machines out there, are simply sitting there and waiting. They're not doing anything until they're asked. And because this is the method that's used, it doesn't scale very well. Once you get up to a certain number of devices on your network, you're spending all your time going out to those devices, asking for information, and then pulling that information back. If you have a small number of devices, that may be efficient enough. In fact, it's very specific to those devices. But if you wanted to scale up to have many hundreds or thousands of devices, this may not be the method to use. Instead, you may use a method called the source-initiated subscription. And as that name implies, it is the source machine that has the original logs on it that initiates the conversation back to the collector. The collector is always sitting there and waiting for information to be sent to it, and you've got all of the machines on your environment that are going to send logs in, simply transferring those logs up to the collector device. In many large environments, this is the way to go. Very efficient, and you can specify exactly which computers in your environment are going to send those logs up. Also very flexible because now you can customize exactly who's sending what to which collector. So it's very broad in the way that you're able to use it and configure it. And in many large environments, it's really the only way to go. Let's look at how you would configure both a collector-initiated subscription and a source-initiated subscription. Let's talk about first configuring this on a collector-initiated setup. Remember, that's where the collector is going out to those machines out on your network and asking to pull those logs back. What you have to do on your source computers that are out there on your network that have the log files, we need to use the Windows Remote Management Service. If you recall, we did this in our video 4.6 that was remote management. So this WinRM is what is used to configure the Windows Remote Management Service. You would do a WinRM quick config on all of those machines, and that puts the remote managed service into a listen mode, and it's going to wait to hear from the collector. Now we need to go into the security on that source computer and make sure that collector has rights to read the event log that's on that machine. So there is a group that is already on your Windows 7 machine called the Event Log Readers group. And what you'll want to do is add the computer that is the collector into this particular group. And now that machine is going to be able to communicate and read those event logs. And it's probably going to be the same machine being added to that Event Log Readers group, no matter what the source happens to be. The security log, of course, can only be read by someone who is a local administrator. So you may have to load very specific rights and permissions to allow access to that security log on that collection device. Now we can go to the collector machine that's going to be initiating all of this and run a program called the Windows Event Collector Utility that sets up the collection process. Its command is WEC-util, and notice the quick-config. Notice the syntax is a little bit different than the Windows Remote Management Service. The WinRM uses quick-config, all one word. The WEC-util uses quick-config. Now, there are some shortcuts. You could just use QC, and I think that's the same on both. But if you're spelling this out, just remember that the syntax is a little bit different between them. Let's set up this collector-initiated setup and see what we get. We're on our Windows 7 desktop. This is going to be the source computer, so we need to configure it to listen for messages that are going to come from the collector. So let's go down to our Start menu. I'm going to type CMD, and to configure this remote management, remember that we need to be in an elevated prompt. So I'm going to use Control and Shift and Enter, and it asks, do I want to make changes to this computer? I absolutely do, and there's my administrator right there at the top. Remember, the command is WinRM, and I want to do a quick config. You could also type QC. That would work as well. And it says that it's set up to receive requests on this machine already. It's not set up to allow remote access to this machine for management, which is exactly what we'd like to do. It needs to make this change. Is that okay? Yes, it is. WinRM has been updated for remote management, and now it's ready to start listening for any messages from the collector machine. We're not quite done on this source machine. We need to add the rights for the collector machine to be able to access the event logs. So I'm going to go to my Start menu and just type Groups, and you'll get the option to edit local users and groups. The group that I'm most interested in is this local group called Event Log Readers. And I have a machine I've already set up as a collector called SG1 that I want to be an event log reader. You can see currently no members are in this group. I would like to add members to this group. Notice by default, the objects that come up are users, service accounts, or groups. And I want to be able to add a computer. So I'm going to change my object type to checkmark that computer option. And it's going to be in my domain, which is sgc.local. And I'm going to put in the SG1, which is the name of that server, and choose check names, and it found it just fine. It put an underline right there, even capitalized it the right way, and click OK. And now in the SGC domain, the computer SG1 now has access to read the security log and the other logs from this particular machine as a source. I've now shifted over to my collector device. That's going to be my Windows Server 2008 R2 machine, my SG1 server. And I'm going to go to the command line here, type CMD. And the command we will run is the WEC-util, the Windows Event Collector utility. And I'm going to run a quick-config. And it says this service startup mode will be changed to delay start. Would you like to proceed? Yes. And there, our event collector service was configured successfully. Now, if we build some subscriptions and specify what we would like to gather, we'll now have logs that are being transferred over to this collector machine from the many different devices on our network. As I mentioned, in large environments, we may want to use a source-initiated collector so that all of those source machines simply send their information in to the collector. Now let's see what we'd have to do on the collector computer to get this to work. The first thing is we need to configure the Windows Remote Management Service, WinRM space quick config. That was what we did on our source computer earlier. Now we're going to do it on the collector to have this source initiated work. On the collector computer, also run the Windows Event Collector utility, which is WEC-util quick-config. Looks very similar to what we've done already. Then we need to create a subscription that will forward events from the event log of those sources back to the collector machine. The easy way to do this, by the way, is in Event Viewer. But if you wanted to build this XML file yourself, it's a little bit complex to be able to do that, but you technically could do that. You could run the WEC util program at the command line to create the subscription there with the XML definition that you had created externally to the Event Viewer. So that's one way to go about doing it. We're going to use the Event Viewer because it's really, really easy to use that way. Then we're going to look at your computer configuration, administrative templates, Windows components, event forwarding, and the configure option in group policy to set this device up as a collector. Now, we're not quite done. We still have to go over to the machines that will be our source computers, and we're going to set up a WinRM quick config on those. So very similar process to what we did earlier. Now we're also going to do it on those source machines. Let's step through that entire process and give you a feel for what's involved. We're going to start on our collector computer to do this configuration. Let's go to our start menu. I'm going to CMD and Control-Shift-Enter to make sure I get an administrator prompt. I need to do a WinRM quick config, and it's going to say, do you want to create a listener? Yes, I do. Great, that was easy. Now let's do a WEC, a Windows Event Collector util, and also do a quick dash config there. And it says the startup mode will be changed to delay start. Do I want to proceed? Yes, I do. That has been configured successfully. Now we want to configure some of our subscriptions. So let's go to our start menu and into our control panel, administrative tools. The easiest way to do this is going to be right from the event viewer. And there is an option on the left-hand side for subscriptions. I don't have any subscription in here currently, but let's say that we wanted to send all of the files, all of the logs that were in the application log and the system log that were critical or high severity, and we'll send just those to this particular machine. So let's create a subscription. You can see right here I've got a create subscription option, and there are a lot of different options for this. This is subscription name. Let's call it the high priority. And I can give it a description here if I would like. I would like to say which log. We're going to put it in the forwarded events log, but I can put this information to any of the logs on this particular computer. I think the forwarded events makes a lot of sense. This does need to be a source computer initiated group rather than this collector initiated. I can select which computer groups in my domain or outside of my domain I would like to include to be able to send this information. And we can always go in and search for computers or groups. Let's find everything. And I want to do everything from the Atlantis Lab PC machine. And maybe that's the one I'd like to choose. Maybe I'd like to put one more in. Maybe I'd like to put my Cheyenne server in here as well. So we'll search for that one. Find that one. There it is, Cheyenne. That looks good. Now I've got two computers that are included for this particular subscription. And now I get to decide what events I would like to collect. Again, I want to be criticals and warnings, and I would like to only be the Windows application and system logs. That looks pretty good. And I'll leave the rest of this by default, which is everything, all categories, keywords, users, and computers. That looks good. And there are advanced settings in here as well. You can check the bandwidth settings. And if you're over a wide area network connection that has a limited amount of bandwidth, you can minimize the bandwidth or minimize latency if you have plenty of space on your pipe. And of course, choose which protocol you would like to use. We'll leave those the defaults and click OK. And there is our subscription. We now have built one. You can imagine an XML file for that is going to be a little more involved. There's going to be a lot more detail to build an XML from scratch. But if you are taking this view and exporting it out, you can always look at that XML, maybe move it to another computer and load it up at the command line rather than using your event viewer. Now we need to move over to the source computer and configure that device. On our source computer, it's what we've run before. It's our WinRM quick config. I'll do a CMD, Control-Shift-Enter, say, yes, I want to make changes, and we'll run the Windows Remote Management Program with a quick config, and it says it's set up to receive requests. Do you want to allow remote access? Yes, I do. And there, now our source is configured, and now it will be able to get that subscription and participate in that process. Now we need to look at our group policies and make sure we've configured a collector on this domain. I'm on a domain computer, so we can modify the group policy to do the things we'd like to do. Let's go down here, and I'm just going to type group policy, and edit group policy is the option that comes up here. I would like to go into my computer configuration. These are administrative templates. It's going to be under the Windows components, and I want to move down to the event forwarding option. There's two options in here. Let's make this full screen to see it. A forwarder resource usage, and I've also got configure the server address, refresh interval, the configuration options. That's exactly what I'd like to do. And if I double click, you've got options here to enable this, and then show the subscription managers that are out here for the subscriptions on this device. The subscription view, if we move this over, you can see the format that's in use, which is the server equals. And we're going to put the same exact configuration in here. For our server equals HTTP, it's not HTTPS on my network. You want to put HTTP or HTTPS depending on how you've got it configured. It's on my SG1 server on the default port of 5986. And it is the WSMan/subscription manager/WEC. That's the default config, and I pulled that right from the configuration help that is in our group policy setting for this. We'll click OK, and now that has been configured. Now we've got it set up, and we can now see that logs are coming from our remote devices all up into the collector, and we'll be able to collect those from this point forward and have one central place to go to view all of the logs that are important to us. We were talking earlier about having graphs and visual displays of information that was going by on our computer, and Performance Monitor is the utility that allows us to do that. You can find that in your control panel, Performance Information and Tools, Advanced Tools, and Open Performance Monitor, or you can simply go to the command prompt and type perfmon. It does exactly the same thing. These are real-time stats, and you'll see when we start looking at Performance Monitor, we can choose a lot of different metrics to be able to pull information in and see exactly what's happening on our computer on a second-by-second basis. We can also collect these things called data collector sets. Those collector sets are these metrics that we're collecting over a long period of time, and we can simply store them to disk so that later on I can go back and see for the last 24-hour period, what did we happen to see with your CPU utilization or memory usage or other processes that are running on your computer. We can also create reports on our Performance Monitor, especially diagnostics reports becomes extremely useful. If we go at the command prompt and we type perfmon/report, we'll get a pretty interesting overall system diagnostics report that has a lot of information inside of it. Let me show you Performance Monitor, and let's run our own system diagnostics report. If you're going through the menus, perfmon is way in here. It's very deep. Let's go to our control panel. There is a section in here for Performance Information and Tools. The tools that we would like are under Advanced Tools, and you get a big list of things, and Performance Monitor is in that big list of things. And here it is. It's a pretty nice, easy to use front end that shows you information about performance on your computer. The default thing that comes up is processor time, the amount of CPU that's being used on your computer over time. And we can add other metrics to this if we'd like. If we hit this green plus sign at the top, it brings up all of these different counters that are on our computer. We're looking at processor. We might want to go up a little bit to the memory. Let's choose some metrics inside of there. The memories is things like all of these different metrics. It actually chose all of them. I'm just going to add all this memory to this, and let's choose also some information about our disks. Let's see what we have available. I'm going to choose information relating to the physical disk, and let's choose the total physical disk information and click OK. What we're going to get now are metrics specific to all of those different memory options I added. And I added quite a few in here. And you can see all of the different settings for CPU is moving all at the same time. Our disk information flatlined, and if that ever changes, you'll see changes to what we're doing with our memory and our disk in here as well. A lot of details associated with these. You can see as I mouse over, I get more information about disk utilization and memory utilization. A lot of metrics there. I almost overdid it to give you an example of what this looked like. Generally, you would add 5 or 6 metrics on the screen, so not everything is being thrown at you. But as you can see, Performance Monitor handles that just fine. You have this option in the upper left for data collector sets. You can create your own data collector sets, but there are some that are enabled by default, like system diagnostics. You can enable any of these. System performance, like a performance counter, and we can look at the properties of these. This is what is caught for a performance counter and where it is stored from a file perspective. It puts it in this performance counter file name that's right here. So it can collect, we can simply turn on this performance counter and it will collect this data over time. We can then go back and look at that data collector set, do some graphs from that, some pretty useful things there. But I also mentioned being able to create your own system diagnostics report. We can do this right here at the command line, and I'm going to close out perfmon so you can see what happens whenever we do that. Let's close out all these windows, and I'm going to type CMD, and we're going to do a perfmon, and I'm going to do a /report. It opens up the resource and performance monitor, and now it starts collecting data. And it's going to collect data for about 60 seconds. And once that's done, we will have an extremely comprehensive report to go through that shows aspects of performance that you may not have even seen before on your computer. Here is our report now that it's been generated. Let's make this full screen. It's our system diagnostics report. We can see we have some warnings, some informational details are here. No antivirus product. We have a gaming graphics and graphics rating for this computer that are very low, and that's true for this particular system. Different basic system checks are here, and it passed. And if we want to look at the details for this, we could always go in and look at that as well. Resource overview, low CPU load, the busiest network adapter is less than 15% busy. Then we can go into software and hardware configurations. And there is a ton of details here dealing with exactly what classes might be on this computer. How's the memory configured? What's the network configuration look like? Let's drill down on some of these, like the IPv4 information, how much we've seen, how many statistics from the network, how much traffic has gone through this computer. Tons of detail. So as you can see, one simple command can really create a very comprehensive report so that if you're running into problems and you want to be able to tell technical support, here's exactly how my computer is configured. This might roll everything you'd ever need right up into one file, and now you can take and send that information off to someone who can then see exactly the environment you're working with. It's time for Q&A. Our first question: what kind of event subscription sends data from the workstation to the collector without a specific transfer request? And if you recall, we had two different kinds of methods to do that. The one that performed that function is a source-initiated subscription. Our next question: which performance monitor feature saves long-term data to disk for later analysis? And the answer for that one is our data collector sets. Our last question is: in which event log would you see information about a problem with Microsoft Word? Well, we had many different event logs to choose from. We had a system event log, we had a security event log, and for Microsoft Word, it would probably be in the application event log. Well, that covers our requirements for this monitoring Windows 7. We've looked at event logging, we've looked at subscriptions, data collection sets, and performance views, especially for systems diagnostics reports. A lot of details there. If you'd like to see any of our absolutely free Microsoft videos, you'd like to participate in our message boards, and much more, you can visit our website at professormesser.com.